The moment Tracy announced at the party that she was single, I knew everything between us was truly over. Standing under the sparkling chandelier, surrounded by friends, colleagues, and business partners, she smiled brightly as she raised her glass. "I'm enjoying my single life right now," she said, her tone light and playful. Laughter echoed around her, but none of them knew she was lying. None of them knew she was already married. To me. I clenched my jaw and forced a calm smile. After all, wasn't this what she wanted? To hide me, to hide our marriage, to maintain her image as the independent, unattached woman who could still attract attention wherever she went? For 2 years, I had tolerated her secrecy. 2 years of pretending. She told me it was necessary for her career, that some investors preferred her unmarried. She said once the company stabilized, we would go public. I believed her. But tonight, watching her proudly deny our relationship, something inside me finally snapped. Francis, one of her investors, stood beside her, laughing a bit too loudly. His gaze lingered on her far too long. I wasn't blind. I had seen the way he looked at her for months. I had seen the late-night texts, the secret meetings disguised as work dinners. Across the room, Ella stood silently, her eyes locked onto mine. She knew the truth. She had always known. She had seen me waiting outside Tracy's office, seen me bringing her dinner late at night, seen me sacrificing everything for a woman who never once stood up for me. Ella never said anything, but her eyes always carried a kind of quiet sympathy, mixed with something softer that I had chosen to ignore. Until tonight. As Tracy laughed and leaned in closer to Francis, pretending as though I didn't exist, my phone buzzed with a text from Ella. "You don't have to stand there and take this. You deserve someone who won't hide you." I looked up. She was right. Without thinking, I stepped forward. My voice rang through the room, steady and cold. "Tracy," I said, "since you enjoy being single so much, let me give you your freedom." The room fell into stunned silence as every head turned toward me. Everyone stared. Tracy's eyes widened for a moment, but she quickly composed herself, forcing a faint smile as if nothing had happened. That was her skill. Always pretending. Always controlling the narrative. But behind those calm eyes, I could see it. She never expected I'd confront her publicly. I glanced at Ella, who remained quietly in the corner, watching everything unfold. There was a softness in her gaze that both comforted and challenged me. 2 years ago, I thought I was the luckiest man alive when Tracy agreed to marry me. Back then, she was already a rising star in the business world. Her tech company had just secured its first round of major funding. I was working as a project manager at a firm where we first crossed paths. She was confident, sharp, and ambitious. Everything I admired. Our chemistry was instant, though few people knew how quickly we grew close behind the scenes. She had built walls around her, but somehow she let me in. After dating for a year, I proposed. She didn't hesitate. We registered our marriage quietly. No ceremony, no announcement, just a private moment at City Hall with only 2 witnesses. One of them was Ella. At the time, Tracy convinced me that keeping our marriage private was only temporary. Investors, according to her, were more comfortable investing in a single, independent female entrepreneur. It was all about optics, she said. Public knowledge of her marriage might make people doubt her commitment to her business or question if she'd slow down for family life. I believed her because I trusted her. I gave up so much for her. I turned down a promotion that would have forced me to relocate. I stayed behind, working quietly, supporting her every step while she scaled her company. When the stress consumed her, I was there. When she was too exhausted to get out of bed, I made her meals. When negotiations drained her, I stayed up listening as she vented. But each time I asked when we could finally share our marriage publicly, her answer was always the same. "Not yet, Joseph, just a little longer." As months turned into years, the hope I carried slowly eroded. Every event, every dinner, every business gathering, I stood in the background while Tracy mingled as if she were unattached. People flirted openly with her. She never corrected them. She never introduced me as her husband. not even as her boyfriend. At most, she called me a close friend. And then there was Francis. He entered the picture during her second round of funding, wealthy, influential, and utterly fascinated by Tracy. From the moment he laid eyes on her, he made no secret of his interest. Tracy laughed it off, calling him harmless, but I wasn't blind. I saw the late-night calls, the private meetings behind closed doors, the invitations that excluded me. She insisted it was business, that she was playing along for the company's sake, and like a fool, I let it go. Ella saw everything too. She was Tracy's executive assistant and had been there from the beginning. She never interfered, but I could see it in her eyes whenever we crossed paths, quiet disapproval mixed with quiet concern. Over time, her quiet sympathy became my only comfort. Then came tonight's charity gala, a high-profile event where Tracy was being honored as one of the top young CEOs in the industry. She wore a sleek black gown, her hair elegantly pinned, diamond earrings catching the chandelier's light. I stood a few steps behind as always, blending into the crowd while she basked in the spotlight. Everything was routine until the moment one reporter casually asked if she was seeing anyone. Tracy laughed, flashing her practiced smile. "I'm married to my work," she joked. "Single life keeps me focused." That was the moment my heart finally broke. I knew right then, she never planned to acknowledge me. Not now, not ever. She wanted the marriage for convenience, for comfort, but never for love. My hands trembled slightly as I looked at my phone. That's when Ella's message arrived. Simple, direct. You deserve someone who won't hide you. In that instant, something inside me snapped. I couldn't pretend anymore. I had spent 2 years living in Tracy's shadow, but not one more day. I stepped forward. The entire hall went silent. Tracy's smile faltered for just a second as I spoke. My voice was steady, but my chest burned. "Tracy," I said, "since you enjoy being single so much, let me give you your freedom." Gasps echoed across the room. Eyes widened. Some whispered. Francis froze, his gaze darting between me and Tracy, sensing the weight of the moment. Tracy's eyes locked onto mine, searching for any trace of hesitation. She found none. I turned and began walking toward the exit, leaving the stunned crowd behind. But as I passed Ella, she reached out and gently touched my arm. Her voice was soft, barely above a whisper. "Joseph," she said, "you don't have to walk away alone." For the first time in years, I allowed myself to look at her, fully, at her gentle eyes, her quiet strength. The warmth I'd been missing for so long was right there, standing inches away. I whispered back, "I know." And for the first time, I smiled. The moment we stepped outside, the cool night air hit my face, but it did little to numb the ache building in my chest. The whispers from inside the hall still echoed faintly behind us. The weight of what had just happened pressed heavily on my shoulders, but strangely, I didn't regret it. Ella followed closely beside me. Neither of us spoke at first. The limousine that brought us was still waiting by the curb. The driver opened the door for me, but I shook my head. I wasn't going back home tonight, not to that house filled with lies. Instead, Ella quietly offered, "You can come to my place for now if you want." I nodded, too drained to speak. She lived only a short drive away, and the silence during the ride was strangely comforting. She didn't press me with questions, didn't fill the air with unnecessary words. She just let me sit with my thoughts. As soon as we arrived, Ella made tea while I sat on her couch staring blankly at the floor. My phone buzzed repeatedly, but I ignored it. I already knew who it was. Tracy. Her panic was predictable. "You didn't deserve that tonight," Ella finally said, setting the cup in front of me. "You've never deserved any of it." I let out a bitter breath. 2 years, Ella, 2 years of hiding, and I let her. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that she loved me. But the truth is, she loved the way I stayed silent. Ella, lowered her gaze, her voice softer now. She used your love as her safety net. She knew you'd always be there. I rubbed my face, feeling the sting behind my eyes. And I was, no matter how much it hurt. The phone buzzed again. Another call. Then another message. Joseph, where are you? Let's talk. Please don't do this here. I shut the screen off and set it face down. Ella's voice was steady. She's not afraid of losing you, Joseph. She's afraid of losing control. That's all she's ever wanted. Control over her image, her career, her narrative. And you were part of that image, silent, invisible. A sharp knock suddenly echoed through Ella's apartment. The air grew heavy. She didn't have to say who it was. We both already knew. I stood and walked slowly to the door. As I opened it, there she stood, Tracy, still in her gown, but her expression was no longer polished and perfect. Her eyes were wide, filled with desperation. Joseph, she breathed, please, can we talk, alone? Ella quietly retreated, into the other room, giving us space. I crossed my arms, forcing myself to keep calm. There's nothing left to talk about. Tears filled her eyes instantly, but I knew those tears well. They weren't about regret. They were about losing her grip. How could you embarrass me like that in front of everyone? She whispered sharply, her voice shaking. I stared at her coldly. How could you hide our marriage for 2 years? How could you stand there tonight smiling and tell the world you were single? Her tears spilled freely now. It wasn't what you think, Joseph. I was doing it for us. For my company. You know how the investors think. If they saw me tied down, they'd question my commitment. I needed time. I shook my head. You always needed more time. Every conversation ended with the same excuse. Not yet. Later. Soon. 2 years of lies, Tracy. She stepped forward, reaching for my hand, but I pulled away. Francis has nothing to do with this, she said quickly, her voice trembling. I swear, nothing ever happened between us. I let out a humorless laugh. I've seen the way he looks at you. I've seen your late-night meetings. You knew exactly what you were doing. Her lip quivered. I was protecting my career. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. I stared at her in disbelief. You weren't protecting your career, Tracy. You were protecting your options. You didn't want anyone to know you were married because you were never sure you wanted to stay married. Her face crumpled at those words, but she didn't deny them. And that silence said everything. Joseph, I love you, she whispered, her voice breaking. I never stopped. The words stabbed into me like knives. They sounded so empty now. She had every chance to love me when it mattered. But she chose herself every time. Then why did you never stand beside me in public? Why was I only good enough in private? My voice cracked slightly, but I kept my composure. I was scared, she choked out, of losing everything I built, of making the wrong choice. I stared at her for a long moment. And yet, the choice was always easy for me. I chose you, every single time. Tracy covered her mouth with her hand, shaking as tears ran down her face. From behind, Ella's voice gently broke the tension. Joseph. I turned. She stood there, her expression steady, supportive. Tracy followed my gaze, and finally looked at Ella, really looked at her for the first time. Recognition and realization filled her eyes instantly. It's her, isn't it? Tracy whispered. She's always been there. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Tracy stepped back, her face collapsing into devastation as the truth finally sank in. I exhaled slowly. You had 2 years, Tracy, and you wasted every moment. Her lips trembled. She wanted to speak but found no words left. I closed the door. The door closed behind Tracy, but her face lingered in my mind. I stood there, leaning my forehead against the cool wood, breathing deeply, trying to steady the storm building inside. Me. The weight of 2 years of sacrifice, silence, and humiliation pressed down on my chest like a heavy stone. My fingers curled into fists. I had loved her completely. I had believed her every promise. And in the end, I was nothing but a placeholder in her carefully constructed life. Ella approached silently, her steps light. She didn't speak. She simply placed a warm hand gently on my arm, grounding me. Her touch was soft but firm, like she knew exactly how close I was to breaking. For a moment, I couldn't move. My entire world had just unraveled in front of me, yet standing beside her, there was a strange calmness. I turned and looked into her eyes. There was no judgment, no pity, only quiet understanding. The kind of understanding I had never received, from Tracy. My throat tightened. I struggled to find words. But what could I say? That I was angry? That I was heartbroken? That I still felt foolish for allowing myself to hope for so long? Ella broke the silence first. Her voice was soft. You don't have to carry it alone anymore. Her words hit something raw inside me. I swallowed hard, forcing down the lump rising in my throat. My voice came out hoarse. I thought if I was patient enough, if I supported her enough, she'd finally choose me. That one day, she'd be proud to stand beside me, not hide me like I was something to be ashamed of. Ella's hand tightened slightly on my arm. You gave her every chance, Joseph. It wasn't your patience that failed, it was her greed. I closed my eyes, letting those words sink in. For 2 years, I had bent until I was no longer myself. I had excused every slight, every dismissal, every moment she brushed me aside in public. I had told myself it was temporary, but deep down, I had known for a long time. I had just refused to face it. I let out a shaky breath. I became invisible in my own marriage. Ella's gaze didn't waver. Not to everyone. That simple sentence struck deeper than I expected. I looked at her again, seeing all the unspoken things that had passed between us over the years. She had seen me long before tonight, seen my silent heartbreak, seen the way I quietly waited on the sidelines while Tracy basked in attention. She had seen me the way Tracy never did. For years, Tracy had made me feel small, like my love wasn't enough, like my presence was something to be managed instead of cherished. But standing in front of Ella now, I finally realized how heavy that emptiness had become. I spoke quietly. How did I let it get this far? Ella hesitated before answering, choosing her words carefully. Because you loved her. You loved her enough to believe she would change. You hoped she would finally see you. That hope blinded you. Love makes people wait for things they shouldn't wait for. Her voice broke slightly at the end, and for the first time, I saw the flicker of emotion behind her calm exterior. She had waited too, in her own way. She had watched me love someone else for years, silently witnessing my pain, never stepping forward, never interfering. I lowered my head. And you stayed through it all. She smiled faintly, her eyes glistening. I stayed because I cared, even when you couldn't see me. My chest tightened. Guilt, regret, and gratitude swirled together inside me. She deserved more than the scraps of my broken heart. She deserved more than to be the one who simply picked up the pieces after Tracy. But right now, her presence was the only thing keeping me from collapsing. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Tracy. Joseph, please. Don't throw away everything we've built. We can fix this. I stared at the screen for a long time. The desperation in her words didn't move me. It wasn't love. It was control slipping from her hands. She wanted to patch up her perfect public image, not mend what she broke between us. I handed the phone to Ella without reading the rest. I don't want to see them anymore. She nodded and quietly powered off the phone. We sat there in silence for a while. The weight of the past 2 years slowly drained from my shoulders as if my body was finally allowing me to release it. After a while, Ella spoke again, her voice even softer than before. Joseph, you still have a future. This doesn't have to be your ending. I looked at her, really looked at her. For years she had been right in front of me, patient, kind, constant. The warmth in her eyes wasn't new. I had simply been too blind to let myself see it. I exhaled deeply. I don't know what comes next. She gave me a small, hopeful smile. Then let's find out together. For the first time in years, I felt something stir in my chest. Not pain, not regret. Hope. The following morning, I awoke to a knock at Ella's door. The sun had barely risen, but the pounding was urgent, sharp. Ella glanced at me with a concerned look before hurrying to answer. When the door opened, Tracy stood there, her appearance completely disheveled, eyes bloodshot from crying. She pushed past Ella without permission, her voice shaking. "Joseph, I need to talk to you, please." Ella remained silent, watching me, waiting for my signal. I gave her a slight nod. She quietly stepped aside, giving Tracy space but staying nearby. I didn't want to be alone with Tracy. Not anymore. Tracy's hands trembled as she pulled out a manila envelope from her bag, slamming it onto the coffee table between us. "I never wanted to show you this. I didn't think I needed to. But you forced me, Joseph." I stared at the envelope, my jaw tight. "What is this supposed to be?" Her breath hitched as if trying to gather the courage to speak. "Francis, he threatened me. 2 years ago, when the second round of funding came in, he offered to invest, but under one condition, that I keep the image of being single." My body froze. She continued. "He said if word got out that I was married, he'd pull the funding and spread rumors that would destroy the company. He even threatened to leak personal information about my family, my father's debts, my mother's health issues, everything." Tears spilled freely from her eyes now. "I was protecting everyone, Joseph. I thought I could control it. I thought if I kept playing along, one day I could fix it." I opened the envelope slowly, revealing documents, emails, photos, recordings. Clear evidence of Francis manipulating, blackmailing, and coercing her. Everything she claimed was written in undeniable black and white. My stomach twisted. "You could have told me," I said quietly, my voice cracking. "You should have trusted me." Her shoulders slumped. "I was ashamed. I thought if I told you, you'd hate me. I couldn't let you see me as weak." The anger inside me battled with pity. My mind reeled. The woman I thought was only selfish had been hiding under layers of fear and desperation. But that didn't erase the pain of what she had done to me. She still made her choices. She still kept me in the shadows. Ella finally spoke, her voice calm but firm. "And yet, even under pressure, you still had choices, Tracy. You chose to lie. You chose to use Joseph's silence for your convenience." Tracy's lip trembled, but she couldn't deny it. She lowered her head. "I was wrong. I know that now. But please, Joseph, if you still feel anything—" I cut her off. "I did feel something. I loved you, but you never let me stand beside you. You never trusted me enough. And now, it's too late." She stumbled back as if my words had struck her, physically. Ella stood next to me, her hand brushing against mine, a quiet reassurance. Tracy whispered, almost pleading, "Can't you give me one more chance?" I shook my head. "I gave you hundreds. You used every one of them." Her shoulders collapsed, completely. Her voice broke into a whisper. "I didn't just lose my marriage. I lost you." There was nothing left to say. She finally turned and walked out the door. This time, she didn't look back. Ella squeezed my hand gently, grounding me again. My chest ached, but this time it wasn't the familiar pain of betrayal. It was something heavier, a quiet sadness for what could never be repaired. Days passed after Tracy left. Her visit haunted my mind, not because I regretted my decision, but because I was forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. There were parts of her story I never saw. She had been trapped in ways she never shared, but that didn't justify how she treated me. My pain wasn't erased simply because her pain was revealed. I tried to refocus my attention, diving into work while Ella quietly remained by my side. She never pressured me to talk, never demanded answers or declarations. She simply stayed, steady as always. Her silent patience was more healing than any words could have been. One evening, as we sat together sharing dinner, there was another knock at the door. I tensed immediately. Ella placed her hand on mine, reading my reaction before even opening the door. But it wasn't Tracy this time. It was David, my oldest friend. David stepped inside, his expression tense. He didn't waste time. "Joseph, you need to see this." He placed his phone on the table and played a recording. It was a conversation between Francis and another investor, secretly recorded. Francis's voice rang out clearly. "Tracy's finished now. I made sure of it. Once Joseph left her, she's no use to me. Her public image is broken. The board's already preparing to remove her. All I have to do is pull the final thread." I froze. David continued. "One of my contacts recorded this at a private investor dinner 2 nights ago. He's planning to destroy her reputation completely. He's already feeding the media lies about her having secret affairs, about you being a jealous ex-husband who left because of infidelity. The board will kick her out. She'll lose everything, Joseph." The room fell silent. Ella spoke first, her voice measured. "Of course he's doing this. He never cared about her business or her work. He only cared about owning her." I rubbed my face, the pressure in my head building. He manipulated her, controlled her, and now he's throwing her away. She made her mistakes, but she doesn't deserve this. David leaned forward. "I know you've moved on, Joseph, but if you don't act now, he'll ruin her life permanently. And he's dragging your name through the mud to do it." I sat there, torn. After everything, part of me wanted to walk away and let Tracy face the consequences of her choices. But a deeper part of me couldn't ignore what Francis was doing. This was beyond revenge. It was cruelty. Ella's eyes met mine. "You have to decide, Joseph. Not for her, for yourself." That night, I barely slept. My mind replayed every moment. Tracy's lies, her secrets, her manipulations. But it also replayed the years I loved her, the sacrifices I made, and the vulnerability. She never allowed herself to show until it was too late. Francis was the one who pushed her into this game, and now he was cutting her down like she was nothing. The next morning, I made my choice. I reached out to a lawyer I trusted, who specialized in corporate disputes. I gathered every document, every recording, every piece of evidence Tracy had left behind. David provided his copy of the recording. We built a case strong enough to expose Francis's entire scheme. Within days, a legal notice was filed. The board received full documentation of Francis's extortion, blackmail, and manipulation. News outlets were carefully fed the truth before Francis's lies could spread. His reputation crumbled overnight. Investors pulled their support, and law enforcement began investigating his activities. 2 weeks later, Francis was arrested on multiple charges. Tracy was cleared of wrongdoing. Her board rescinded the pending vote to remove her. The company she nearly lost was saved, but none of it felt like victory. Tracy reached out after the dust settled. She asked to meet one last time. We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe where we used to go during better days. When I arrived, she was already seated, her appearance much different than before. No expensive jewelry, no perfectly styled hair, no confident facade. Just Tracy, raw, stripped of pretense. As I sat down, she offered a faint, fragile smile. "Thank you," she whispered. I simply nodded. She took a shaky breath. "I know you didn't do it for me." "You're right," I replied softly. "I did it because what Francis did was wrong. No one deserves that." Her hands trembled as she wrapped them around her coffee cup. "You saved me again, even after everything I did to you. I don't know how you can be so kind." I stared at her for a long moment. "It's not kindness, Tracy. It's closure." Her eyes filled with tears. "I destroyed the one person who truly loved me. I thought I was protecting everything I built, but I was only protecting my own fear. She looked down, her voice breaking. And I lost you because of it, I exhaled slowly, my voice steady. You didn't lose me because of Francis. You lost me, long before he entered the picture. You lost me when you chose your ambition over trust, when you chose image over honesty, and most of all, when you couldn't let me stand beside you. Her shoulders shook, but she didn't argue. She couldn't. I continued. I don't hate you, Tracy, but I can't love you anymore either. Tears streamed down her face as she nodded. I understand now, and I won't bother you again. She forced a small smile through her tears. I hope you find happiness, Joseph. Real happiness. I stood, placing some cash on the table. I already have. Her eyes followed me as I turned and walked away. Outside, Ella waited patiently across the street. She saw me approach and smiled gently, offering her hand. I took it without hesitation. As we walked away together, I felt the final remnants of my past with Tracy dissolve. For years, I had carried the weight of a one-sided love. But now, for the first time, I was walking toward someone who chose me fully, without conditions, without secrets. Ella glanced at me. How do you feel? I smiled. Free. And this time I meant it. The months after that final meeting moved forward quickly, but the shadows of the past no longer followed me. Everything surrounding Tracy and Francis had finally reached its conclusion. Francis remained under investigation, with dozens of financial crimes surfacing once the authorities dug deeper. His empire collapsed, and every investor he once controlled withdrew entirely, leaving him bankrupt and disgraced. His name became a cautionary tale in the business world, a man who built influence through manipulation, only to destroy himself through greed. Tracy, though spared from legal consequences, stepped down as CEO shortly after. Public sympathy grew around her as more people learned of the blackmail, but even with her name cleared, she chose to walk away from the company she had built. In her words, she didn't want to remain a symbol of either pity or scandal. She sold her remaining shares and disappeared from public view. I heard later that she moved to another city, far from here, where no one knew her name. She started volunteering at a nonprofit organization, helping young entrepreneurs navigate business pitfalls. In a strange way, perhaps she finally found something meaningful outside of ambition. But her story was no longer tied to mine. For me, everything that followed felt like the first real breath of my own life. Free from secrecy, free from betrayal, free from the weight of unreciprocated love. Ella remained my constant. Her quiet presence had been the one steady force through every storm, and now, with nothing left in the way, we finally allowed ourselves to move forward completely. Our relationship wasn't born out of convenience or timing. It had always been built on understanding, respect, and patience. Now, it was simply allowed to breathe. One evening, as we sat together watching the city lights from my apartment balcony, Ella rested her head gently on my shoulder. "You've changed," she whispered. I smiled, brushing her hair lightly with my fingertips. "For the better, I hope." Her soft laugh carried warmth. "You no longer carry that heaviness. You're finally free." I nodded. "Because of you. You never left, even when I was too blind to see you standing right beside me." She raised her head to meet my gaze. "I never stayed because I expected anything, Joseph. I stayed because I cared. The rest, that was always your decision." I looked into her eyes, seeing the honesty, the vulnerability, and the kind of love I had longed for but never received before. "And my decision," I said softly, "is that I want to build a life with you. Not out of gratitude, but because I finally know what it means to love and be loved completely." Tears glistened in Ella's eyes, but they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of pure, overwhelming happiness. Weeks later, on a quiet morning as the sun painted gold streaks across the sky, I proposed to Ella. Simple, sincere. There was no spectacle, no audience, just the two of us standing on the very balcony where we had rebuilt everything. She said yes, without hesitation. Unlike my previous engagement, there were no secrets this time. Our families gathered, our friends celebrated, and every part of our lives was open and shared. The wedding was modest, but full of genuine joy, the kind that doesn't need to be broadcast or performed because every person present was there for the right reasons. On our wedding day, I stood at the altar, watching Ella walk toward me, dressed in a flowing gown that shimmered softly under the sunlight. Her smile carried none of the cold distance I once accepted from Tracy. Instead, it carried warmth, honesty, and certainty. When her father placed her hand in mine, I looked at him directly. "I promise you," I said, "I will treasure her every single day." He smiled, nodding. "And I know you will, Joseph." The ceremony felt like the closing of one life and the beginning of another. Every vow we exchanged, every glance we shared, erased whatever lingering echoes of pain still remained. After the ceremony, as the guests mingled and the reception buzzed with laughter, David pulled me aside with a drink in hand. He smirked. "So this is what peace looks like." I laughed quietly. I almost forgot how it felt. He nudged me. "You know, a lot of people would have called it poetic justice. Tracy lost everything. Francis fell from his throne, and you walked away, clean with the woman who truly loved you from the start." I paused, staring at the vibrant celebration around us. Maybe. But for me, it wasn't about revenge. It was about letting go. The revenge took care of itself. David raised his glass. "To finally getting what you deserve." We clinked glasses. Later that night, when the party had ended and we returned home as husband and wife, Ella curled into my arms, exhausted but glowing with quiet joy. "You never answered one question," she murmured. I kissed her forehead. "What question?" "If everything hadn't happened, if Tracy had chosen you properly from the start, do you think we would have ever found each other?" I thought about it for a moment. The truth was painful but honest. "No," I whispered. And that's the irony, isn't it? All that pain led me here. I wouldn't undo a single moment because it brought me to you. She smiled against my chest. Then maybe everything happened exactly as it was meant to. I closed my eyes, holding her tighter. For the first time, I didn't feel the urge to analyze or question anymore. The bitterness was gone. The wounds were healed. And the past, though heavy, no longer held any power over me. I finally had everything I once thought was impossible. Not the perfect image of love, but the real thing. And as I drifted off to sleep with Ella breathing softly in my arms, I whispered to myself, "Sometimes losing everything you thought you wanted is the only way to find what you truly need."